everybody. I have 6:30. Let's call our meeting to order. We'll begin with the invocation and the pledge. Heavenly Father, we come before you today with grateful hearts, mindful of the blessings of freedom, safety, and community. We pause to honor the brave men and women who serve as our first responders and members of the military, those who stand ready day and night to protect, defend, and serve. We ask for your guidance over this meeting. Grant us the wisdom of Solomon, the courage of the prophets, and the compassion of Christ as we discuss matters that affect our community. Help us to listen with respect, speak with integrity, and act with justice. Bless each person here, our leaders, staff, and citizens, that we may work together in unity for the common good. May our decisions reflect truth, fairness, and love for our neighbors. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Item 3 then on our agenda is public comments. Ms. Cheyenne, do we have any public comments today?
Well, I see Christy Smith, but it says that she's here for the variance. Do you want her to speak in public comment or on the agenda item?
It's your choice if you'd like to wait and speak during that item or if you'd like to speak in advance.
I'll just speak in advance. Hi, Christy Smith, 36630 Canyon Road. Y'all all got a memo to match, and y'all got the memo to match. Super cute. Y'all got green and blue. Anyway, break the ice.
I was like, what?
Y'all all match. It was great.
Colors.
I didn't know that was important.
You didn't know? Thank you for serving our great city of Simonton. I just want to thank y'all all for doing that. I'm going to remind you of something I mention every budget season, which is I would love to see a city enforcement officer to the city. It's just very discouraging for someone like me who followed the rules, paid for my permits, just go out on my golf cart for a leisure ride one day, and there's privacy fences going up, and there's garages being, erected with no flood flow through, and I just don't know when it'll solve, because the more that we allow it, the more that people just come in and I can do whatever I want to do. Anyway, y'all know the things. We have religious facilities. We actually just found out we have a furniture store operating out of our community, so it's just quite interesting. So come to Valley Lodge and do whatever you want. Anyway, leading on to that, I'll bring to y'all's attention Walter Cernya's parents. They have been working away on their beautiful new build, assuming they were doing everything correctly, ACC, city, and county, to find the elevation is off. This is not the first time this has happened. Before the flood, there were other houses that assumed they were at the correct elevation, and then they realized once they flooded that their elevation was off. Is this a problem with the survey company? Is this a problem with the builder just assuming that it's FEMA or the city? I don't know where the problem is, but there's definitely problems. So it's not the first home, and it probably won't be the last. But as I drive through the community, I can usually spot a house that I can tell is, in my opinion, a little low, because my goal was to be the highest on my street. So anyway, I guess it's pretty discouraging when you do everything you can to build your dream home, and then right before move-in, you realize that the elevation is not to the city standards. And then what do? That's kind of scary. So they've been working away to make their dream house. They've all decided to make this their forever home, and I hope that we can grant them a variance today to continue to be our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Cheyenne, any others?
Barbara Minton.
Barbara Minton, I'm Bronco, a little doggy, and I'm here to tell Lori how much we appreciate the last 8 years as being our first female mayor in the city of Simonton, and all the amazing things that you've done, the spiritual prayers and uplifting of the community during the most tumultuous time of the history of Simonton. And I was trying to think of how long I've known you. I've known you since Cole and Josh were at Rocking Horse, like 28 years. We were on the HOAs together. You did the Simonton beautification, delivering all the mulch for the community, for the You've done so much for our community, and there's so much that people don't understand or know about you. How amazing you are, how your husband is always here to support you and protect you from people who don't understand. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate all your service and everything you've done for us. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Barb. Okay.
And then there's Justin Diaz, but I believe that's gonna be for specifically 5A.
Are you Justin?
Yes,
You
that's
want-
me.
You want to wait until?
I can wait until
make a comment?
our agenda item is pulled up, that way I could have the engagement, or I can just introduce myself, whatever works for y'all.
How about we'll save it for the item, and then the much more discussion can happen.
Sounds good, thank you.
All right. Cheyenne, that's all for
That's-
us on public? Okay.
Yes.
Item 4 is the consent agenda. We have special meeting minutes from March 4th and regular meeting minutes from March 17th for approval by council.
Madam
March
Mayor,
11th.
I'm sorry, did I read wrong? March 11th and March 17th.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to remove both items from the consent agenda.
Okay? All right, so those items will be considered individually. What we'll do is hold those items over and go directly to new business for item 5A. Consider and possible action on requested variance from Maverick 3D at 221 Stockade, which will keep the item, all of you all from having to wait while we do regular business.
Okay,
Okay?
so,
So welcome.
can
You're-
proceed.
Mhm.
Thank y'all, this is the first time I've been out to Simonton, so thank you for having me. I'm from Houston, so I haven't been out here, it's lovely. Really, we're here for something very simple. I sent a memo around to kind of give the members of the council and the mayor kind of a timeline of the events of this particular matter. But really, the situation is that we're not seeking relief in a traditional variance type of setting, but ultimately we're seeking for the council to acknowledge that the city has already made a decision with regard to the permit issuance, and we are simply seeking that those approvals, which were relied on, allow the certificate of occupancy to be released for the particular property, which is located at 221 Stockade Drive, Wallace, Texas, 77485. And so I'm just going to run through kind of a brief history of what happened in this particular matter. And if you have any questions, feel free to stop me at any time.
Do you mind if I just ask you up front?
Yes.
Are you, Phil, you have to help me with the language to make sure I'm asking you the question the way I'm intending it. Are you preferring that we consider your letter from late this afternoon about the certificate of occupancy? Or do you still want to proceed with this variance request for council this evening?
So our request is it's a request for the certificate of occupancy, because our position is that that was already made and that decision was already determined by the discretion of the city during the building permit process. And so, the goal in this particular circumstance is that it's not, the discretion was already exercised prior, and that, at this point, it's really an administrative offering of the certificate of occupancy. That's the position that my client takes.
Okay. So Phil, can these two things run concurrently this evening, or do we need to make?
So, because the original agenda item was for the requested variance, though I think the evidence that would be presented for the variance would probably be the same evidence that's presented for the approval of the CO. Though council can't make the CO decision off this agenda item, you can still present the evidence before council, and that can be an administrative decision that has to be made later.
Okay, so no decision would be able to be made.
Not on the CO. If it was a variance and you're requesting the variance under the code, that decision could be made tonight, because that was posted on the agenda and it's what was given to the public to know that's coming.
Okay. Can I have one moment to confer with my client on
Absolutely.
the preference on this procedural aspect of this? I apologize, thank you.
It's no problem. Just making sure we dot all our i's.
Yeah, I will say, in essence, if the variance is granted, then the CO can proceed.
Right,
But
that's
I'm
what
not saying the variance will be, I'm just saying if it is, then just so you know what can move forward.
Right, and that, yeah, I just want to talk to
Okay,
them so that
yeah,
you kind of
okay.
know what that
Yeah.
outcome would be and all that. Thank you.
Yeah, you can also use the microwave if you want to. I wouldn't do that.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, well, she was banged up pretty bad, but they took her.
I just want to say people.
Always something. All I see is EMS when I'm driving around the neighborhood. It's all
To meet some really nice new neighbors. You told me that there's some nice.
some great people.
That moved in.
Yep, great people. All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't know everyone was waiting on me. So, Your Honor, we'd like to proceed with the variance hearing, which was scheduled on the agenda.
Great.
If I may ask, though, there are certain things as part of the consideration that I would like to be heard, other than my presentation, would be the builder is here as well to provide testimony, as well as one of the members of the household is here as well. So, the brief history of this particular home. There was an elevation certificate that was executed on this property. That was April 24th of 2025. I have provided a memo with this breakdown as well as the exhibit numbers on that chart. It's a one-page chart. I wish I had more copies than this so that way y'all could easily follow it. But if there is a record, I'd move to have that entered into the record as well, if that's acceptable for the panel. So elevation certificate was executed for the property on April 24th, 2025. After that, we have May 11th of 2025, where Maverick 3D Builds, which was the builder of this particular property, they submitted an application for the residential permit. That residential permit also included that elevation certificate that was previously done in that prior April. There was also a procedure that happened after that where there was the Valley Lodge Property Owners Association that needed to approve the residents, the plan specifications. That was achieved and done on June 17th of 2025. A day later, the builder, Maverick, provided a letter of approval to the city from that Valley Lodge Property Owners Association with their residential permit. On June 25th of 2025, we have an email from the mayor indicating that there was an additional permit that needed to be attached to the residential permit. That was the floodplain permit application, as well as requesting a certificate of liability associated with that. That was executed by the builder that same day, but provided to the city for consideration on July 31st of 2025. And so again, that was the floodplain permit application and the certificate of liability insurance, which was provided in connection with the residential building permit. That application had gone out earlier. That same day, the city informs the builder that the application had been processed and advised that the city engineers and the inspectors for the city, the company, would review within 10 days. On approximately a month later, August 27th of 2025, the city issued the building permit without corrections, and this was after both applications for the floodplain as well as the residential building had already been in the possession of the city.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last date you said.
Yeah, so the issuance of the building permit without corrections was August 27th of 2025. And so it was issued after the prior applications had already been in the possession of the city, and the representations that the engineers would take a look at the application information as well as the inspection company that the city goes with. That's pretty much it for the timeline. The building permit expiration date was February of this year, and my client, the builder, Maverick, the first time they were informed of any discrepancies or corrections with regard to the building was issued to them on March 5th of 2026. And so throughout the entirety of the process of building this, we had I think it's the third-party preferred city company that did the inspections of the property. That was done throughout the different phases of the particular construction project, as well as the final inspection. It was represented that there were corrects and proceeds here and there, but everything had passed those inspections, including the final inspection, which there was a brief correct and proceed for things that were not related to the things addressed to my client in March of this year. And so ultimately, through the variance process, we're seeking that the city acknowledge kind of the timeline of everything that went on in this particular case, and acknowledge and ultimately potentially making a finding with regard to the reliance of my client on the building permits that was issued subsequent to the applications that were made. Ultimately, reasonably relied on that. The project is completed, the house is up, it's completely done. And so the money and the inconvenience of not having this property owner entering into their house has been detrimental to them. And so I'm going to have the builder kind of come up and talk a little bit about some of the other issues, but I will also note that during no point during the inspection process were there ever any issues regarding hazards or safety or flooding issues that any of the inspectors let the general contractor know through the entire process. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to representative from Maverick, the builder on this particular property, to give a little bit more details about boots on the ground and those inspections.
My name's Christian Bell with Maverick 3D Builds. I was project managing this home. I work closely with an architectural drafter that I outsourced, which is Marissa Chavez, who did the majority of the actual interaction with the city during the actual permit process. I rely on her and I rely on the city to actually go through the permit process with all the applications, all the filling out, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So whenever I actually do receive a permit to actually start building, I receive the plans. My job is to build accordingly from those plans and those paperwork that I received. Not only did I do that, we did it in a very timely manner. We went through the process with the inspectors. Each inspector that came out, I was actually there personally with the first two inspections, and then my superintendent, Alberto, was there for the last two inspections, as well as making some small corrections towards the end. So I went through thoroughly, and before the actual foundation was actually secured to the actual concrete piers that we did monolithically, so the concrete piers are one piece all the way down 12 feet. So the house is definitely overbuilt and very strong for what it is. It's not done in cinder blocks. It's a monolithic 16-foot tall, 16-inch by 16-inch wide concrete column with a bell bottom at the bottom. So it's definitely structurally sound, but I did not secure the actual house to those columns until I had that inspection with that inspector. Once he, said everything was fine, I gave him the elevation certificate of where the finished floor was. I gave him the actual form survey. I gave him the engineered letters. Gave him all this stuff. He documented it. Said everything's, fine. He's going to submit to the city. At that point, I'm getting the, green tag to just move forward. So at that point, I started to move forward. So the whole point of this is at no point was there an actual conversation of any sorts stipulating that the plans that I was building upon were insufficient or incorrect. So I continued to build the house and continued to secure that home to those columns to get to the point of getting a completed house.
Mr. Bell, I don't mean to interrupt. Can you give the date when you got that green tag?
The date when I called him, I got the inspector's cell phone number.
I was like, Eric,
I'm just trying to align it
we
with-
can get that in the Bureau Veritas inspection reports.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Rather than
Is there-
have it employed,
And we
unless
also-
you have it handy, but.
I don't.
We also filed a FOIA today, just in case, that we are prepared to pull down depending on how this goes
Okay.
out. So we have requested from those companies this documentation.
Okay. Give me one.
And so, yeah, that particular green tag was based on the verbal of talking to the inspector personally for that hour that we were on the job site and him saying everything's good to go and move forward. So from that point on, like I said, it's just moving forward and continuing with the house. The reason for us building right above the floodplain was because of a handicap from the client. She will be actually wheelchair bound in the future. We don't know when that is, but we have a wheelchair lift that was designed for that particular elevation of the house. We did, ADA, door openings as well for the home, and we're trying to limit the amount of steps that went up into her house, of why we submitted the plans as they were, and then they got approved, so we didn't see any issue with the height elevation or any stipulation. And I know I had a meeting with you preliminary, and I was looking at the actual floodplain application, and there's nothing blatantly on there or even vaguely on there stipulating that if the stipulation is 116, shouldn't it actually be on the floodplain application? For me, that'd be just a notable thought for the future for any builder, because builders can be your actual owner builder. You can be an owner builder, and they don't have all the knowledge that you tried saying that, hey, don't you read all these things? I build in a bunch of different counties, a bunch of different areas. I don't read all the stipulations. I build based on plans that are provided to me, that are approved by the city, and based on the stipulations that y'all have in accordance. So there's a lot of different areas of construction, a lot of different stipulations with all the building laws and building codes. And me as a builder, I don't know them all. But this particular area, I believe the client is very happy with her house, and she would love it to stay at the same elevation so she could make it a little bit easier access into her home. But that's all I have to say, and I think her son would like to come have a few words.
Hey, I have a quick question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that when you first asked for the C of O, we asked for a finished elevation certificate of the first floor. Did y'all do that? Do you have it?
The actual elevation certificate, I did send it to you, was the same one that I sent to the actual information from the actual inspector on the very first visit had that information.
That's the elevation of the ground at the construction site.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. I'm saying, is there a
it's
certificate generated after the first floor was built that says it's 114.1
Yeah,
or whatever?
it's on the actual form survey, stamped right in the middle of the actual survey thing from the survey company.
Okay.
Not ProServe.
Thank you.
Who do we use from the survey company? Texas
It's
Service.
usually an engineer. It's okay, if you have it already.
Here's the elevation certificate.
No, that was a preliminary one, but it's the actual Texas Survey and Associates.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm Walter Sarna. I don't know many of you personally, but I've been in the neighborhood for a few years. Yeah, I'm sure y'all know me. So we just want to, make this petition for my mother to be able to move into her new home. We weren't expecting any of this to happen when we started building her dream house. We really just want to keep in the neighborhood. We found our home there. We now own 3 houses in the neighborhood, and we would really just like to get her out of the house that we're currently in Wagon, which is at ground level, just to get her out of the floodplain, But yeah, that's pretty much about it. We just really want to ask you guys for, have some. I don't know how to use I'm kind of nervous. I don't usually do this. But just.
It's an unusual thing.
We're all neighbors here, we just want to be able to continue living in Valley Lodge, growing the community, and I would really just love to have my mom there, keeping nearby. She's reaching an age where she's more dependent on me, and so I just want to be nearby, help her out with whatever she needs, and definitely having the elevator or the lift in the house, it's going to be a huge help now that she's fixing to be wheelchair bound in the next couple months, or hopefully longer than that. But we just want to get her into a safe house.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, I don't want to be redundant, but ultimately, the timeline that I pulled out essentially shows that there was a reliance on the building code, the building and plan specifications, which were ultimately approved. After that, the construction began. There was city involvement with regard to the inspections, and then ultimately, final inspection was approved, and those documents are forthcoming. But I believe there was testimony provided with regard to passing of those inspections that led to the ultimate final inspection. And so we asked that a certificate of occupancy be issued, aside from the issues raised by the engineer that was issued on March 5th of 2025. And I'm prepared to answer any questions that are lingering on any of the council members' minds to help get this resolved.
I have only one question.
Yeah.
What is the elevation that FEMA requires versus the elevation the city's requiring?
114.
So FEMA's minimum requirement is at vehicle.
Is 114?
In this particular location is 114. Now across the city it varies, but in this
Understand, yeah. Okay, so FEMA says 114, and you're at,
The house is at 114.11.
so as far as FEMA is concerned, we're okay?
Yes, sir.
That's correct.
well, based on
I would like to hear
yeah.
somebody.
So based on
Fish.
the floodplain administrator's view of the flood maps, which we don't look at the static elevation.
Just before we continue, so just kind of keeping with procedural steps, I just want to make sure that if you didn't have anything else to present, this is a city representative, just so you know. No, exactly. So I just want to make sure that if there's no more questions for the presentation, we can actually have Craig come up and give his presentation, and then both parties can ask questions then and of each other and things like that, and kind of move forward from there. But that way we have the presentation moving. No, you can ask questions, but you're asking questions of someone who hasn't presented yet.
Gotcha.
Just
Or
saying-
offered to answer your question.
Yeah.
So with regard to the FEMA requirements, it is 411, and from my understanding, the house is built at that level. Now, you may hear from the city representative with regard to what that means as it relates to the city charter and what the administrative requirements are for the actual city itself. But as far as what FEMA requires, we are at the ground level flood, minimum threshold floodplain.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
So you guys say you had a floodplain permit, but I don't see it.
So the floodplain permit application is an exhibit to the letter that I provided to this to the mayor, actually, and that is Exhibit F, which was executed on June 25th of 2025.
So.
And that was the application.
The floodplain permit application was submitted. There is not an approved permit that went back to that.
Okay. So you say
That's why you don't see it. The application is there, but not.
Right.
And so the application was there, but we received no correspondence with regard to the outcome of that permit.
So you built the building without permit?
We built the building with the building permit. And so, there are interpretations of the government code with regard to multiple permits being issued. And there's also, case law as it relates to circumstances in which a permit is issued when it's something that is so detrimental to the construction of a project. Whereas like here we have the building permit for the construction of a property. And then all of a sudden, red flag, now there's this flood thing that was never communicated with folks, and now we want a two-foot rise of a home, which is not a reasonable remedy for my client to address.
And I asked the question just because I'm asking for facts.
Yeah, you got it.
So it says you need a floodplain permit, but you don't have a floodplain permit.
We have a building permit.
A building permit.
And so the detrimental reliance of my client was that the building permit contemplated all applications before it when it was issued. So when the permits were issued, there was only an application for a building permit. That building permit, there wasn't separate applications for the electrical, the plumbing, or anything else. And so whenever these permits are issued with regard to the building of a structure, and the city had the application filed with all the information granted to the city to make the decision on top of the references that an engineer was going to be taking a look and the inspectors were going to be taking a look and make a decision within 10 days, and then subsequent to that we have the permit being issued a month later. my clients looking at that building permit as, okay, we're good to go, the plan specifications are approved, they had all of our application information.
Anyone else have a question? Oh, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Craig?
All right. I will put the disclaimer before I talk that what I will say is trying to remain factual, and so it's not biased on the 250 plus homes I inspected after Hurricane Harvey. But essentially, I'm going to go through the timeline that was represented is generally the same timeline. However, the only timeline as part of that I don't see, because BV handles your inspections, is when the form survey and all that green tag, so I don't have those dates. But essentially, LJ received a set of plans and some permit documents on about March 20th that did not have the floodplain development permit attached to it at that time. Did have the referenced elevation certificate, but not the floodplain development permit. We notified the city of that, but we went ahead and issued a comment letter to the city on about, let me look at the actual date, May 20th. And so the two things that we noticed on those plans is one is the plans and the elevation certificate did not reference the base flood elevation, or at least the 2-foot requirement of what the finished floor was. The elevation certificate left that part blank, and the plans just had a general note that the finished floor is going to be about 6 feet above natural ground. So our comment was, and we required this of all of our permitting, is that the plans will reflect what the actual true finished floor elevation should be. That way it is documented. We also try to, it doesn't happen in all cases, but when it's a little bit unclear is when we sign the floodplain development permit application, we'll try to put a note on there. We do that more so for accessory structures when flood vents and things are required. That way, again, it's just documented when flood vents doesn't apply here, but just wanted to mention that. So we issued that letter to the city.
What was the date on that letter?
The date was May 20th. Then we got not necessarily an updated set of plans, but we got a similar set of plans on August 13th. Still, the elevation of the structure was not noted, and so we still had some questions. At that point, something happened where the city issued a building permit, but not the floodplain development permit. Technically, in the eyes of FEMA, those are two separate permits. They're two separate permit processes, just the city does them concurrently. And so we did not sign off on that permit. I forget the exact reasons why we then got called in this past year. I think there was a concern that it wasn't high enough, and so we went out there and did a site inspection. We measured from the basically lowest adjacent grade at a couple of spots of the house throughout the house, and then determined that just based on elevation, based on those measurements, the house was somewhere, and this was my estimate, just not having survey quality, 113.8 to 114.6. They provided there was an October 6th survey that we were provided that showed the finished floor to be 114.11. When we develop or determine what the base flood elevation of a single property, we don't necessarily just look at the static map. If you're familiar with a floodplain development, a firm flood insurance rate map, it will have squiggly lines that basically rounds to the nearest foot. It could be lower than that number, it could be higher than that number. So what we do is we go look at the actual FEMA flood profile, which is, in this case, we have a flood profile, and we go and look at where the home's at and what the actual elevation is. We've done this enough that it's now second nature with some of these that we can just look at it and get it. But essentially, we get, when we run through that, about 114.2. We've worked with people 1.4, 114.1, 114.2 is kind of what we get. So the house we'll say, is at the BFE. There's a little bit of judgment on where it actually falls in that profile, and you're in a weird bend of the river, so it's my interpretation of where it hits in that bend versus what somebody else's could be. So you're about in that 114 realm. Your development, your flood damage prevention ordinance basically requires 24 inches above that base flood elevation, so that's how we get to the 116.2. And then there's some notes on another pad that wasn't in the permit. We won't cover that because this is more for the home. But essentially that's how we got to where we're at today. One of the things that we have, I've talked to, actually Cheyenne and I talked again, I guess today, about just making sure some of these inspections are actually covered properly. This is the first time I'm hearing that somebody looked at the form survey and kind of gave it the green light. I don't know what the basis of that is, but I'd like to dig in, not necessarily on this one, but also make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. That way we know that either BV's looking at it with the same eyes we are, or if we're going to start going out there, or however the city wants to handle that, we can handle it both ways. I think BV can do it as part of their inspection process, but maybe we just need to have that more detailed conversation with them. Additionally, I put it in kind of some information to you. Obviously, Fort Bend County has done a watershed update for all the major watersheds across Fort Bend County, including Brazos River. This is one of the few areas. It's not like this in all areas, but in this particular spot, the county's BFE actually does reduce a little bit based on their modeling. It's not FEMA approved. It is good information. For some part of it, we look at it best available. But in theory, the county's model actually has it down to 113.6. Just again, throwing it out there with what the county has studied. And so their BFE in this particular location, Valley Lodge, is actually a little bit of a reduction. Whether we'd see that in a full mapping, we'll see, because there are some modeling things that they did differently that's not currently accepted to FEMA, so that could be overridden in the future. But currently there's no mapping update for the Brazos River. That's just the county's post-Harvey kind of assessment. And so that's kind of where we are at today. And I know in the letter I sent to council, there's some additional things that we're looking at as far as in your development, or the floodplain development ordinance, just making sure we're doing these checks the way this one kind of did not go through a process the way that, in an ideal way. So with that, I'll take some questions. Yes, sir.
And I don't know if you're the right person. So with their elevation now, at the 14.2, so they will not have to buy flood insurance because they're above the BFE? I mean, they can't, right? But will they have to buy the FEMA flood insurance like we do?
So this one, depending on what you do tonight, we will most likely need to document that with FEMA, that we have a structure that doesn't meet your ordinance. Because one of the things that FEMA looks like is, okay, that's fine, you have the minimum, but if you as a community adopt a higher standard, they hold you to that higher standard. Now, if you grant this variance, what FEMA brings down, the worst case scenario is you grant this variance, worst case scenario is FEMA would come in and say, okay, no more flood insurance across the city of Simonton. That is a worst case scenario that I doubt will happen the way we have documented this and all the conditions, but it's just something we're going to have to make sure on your variance, how we document the terms and conditions of why you're granting it and everything. So, but that is kind of, but it could mean FEMA deems it ineligible for at least the National Flood Insurance, NFIP insurance.
So they would get, the homeowner would get a letter, you're not eligible if you flood.
That's typically how it's supposed to happen, whether it happens with FEMA, especially right now with how they're.
Right. They're likely.
Yeah. So, and I don't know what the private insurance has gained some momentum, so I don't know what the private insurance, but at least it could impact federally backed mortgages in the future. So, which may or may not come into play right now, but if they ever try to sell it, could come into play.
So, if we granted it, they did a review, they being FEMA did a review, they could pull all of the flood insurance for this area.
Worst case scenario.
But it is possible.
It is possible.
Something everybody.
I have not seen it happen, but it's possible.
Is that in legislative somewhere? Is that a legislative?
Basically, in participating in the FIP, if FEMA finds you deficient in managing your floodplain, they can basically they can remove you from the program.
So it's And most of that's what done on statistics, where they look at if you're a high-risk area.
Yeah, like if you went through, the only one I have not been a part of, but I've read, is basically the city was not doing anything to manage their floodplain. And so FEMA's like, hey, you're not doing anything, so you're out. That's kind of probably the extreme and most likely. I mean, again, there's a process, you have a variance process, so I think you are doing everything, even if you grant, I think you are doing everything you can do, and we'll document that. And, we can't guarantee that FEMA won't come down on you, but
What else could we lose besides?
that's essentially all.
Do you just lose insurance? There's nothing.
Just be a threat. It'd basically be a threat to your status as a community in the National Flood Insurance Program.
And if that is pulled, there's other FEMA related, so if there's any FEMA grants or any of those sort of things that come down, they wouldn't be given to areas that aren't covered by an FIP.
Yes,
so FEMA
sure
may
you
pull
lose grants.
So all federal grants.
a lot of federal grants, but FEMA-based, that would be the first and foremost. But again, what's the risk? Is there a risk? Yes. Is it a high risk? No. But is there a risk? Yes. Again, but it ties to the management, right?
Can the city get rid of the ordinance and fix it that way?
So, we're not a public comment. Uh-huh.
Common sense.
All right, any other questions for Craig?
But if we needed being passed in the public, if we're showing we're tightening the screws on the process, it's showing where we're first.
Yeah, again, I think we could show all of that, and that would, if FEMA came, and they do, let's see, the city last did a FEMA audit
24.
Was it 24? Oh, wow, I was thinking it was like 20, okay. Wow, it's been that early. And so what FEMA does in their typically audit process, they look at, okay, all the permits you've issued, they'll actually look at the aerial and be like, hey, this home or this structure was built in the floodplain, where's your permit? And so, I mean, they go through all that, and then we could, in this case, if you granted it, we could say, this is the scenario, this is all the steps we took to make sure this didn't happen again. And so that would go along with it. Because most of the time, FEMA, really any agency like this, they just want to see that you're correcting a deficiency if there's a found one.
So is there a requirement, does this go through FEMA, and maybe you can't answer this question, but with it going through this, we did a waiver, if they could not get flood insurance, how does that affect their mortgage?
So if they have a mortgage and it's federally backed, so it's an FHA loan, it's a VA loan, it's backed by Freddie Mac, there's some other conditions. Basically, they would not provide the funding for that.
They don't. Okay.
So there, go ahead. So there are homes without flood insurance.
There are homes without flood insurance, correct.
So there are homes in Valley Lodge without flood insurance with mortgages. I can't answer with Mars because I don't know if it's a personal business, right?
Some mortgage companies do a better job, like the big guys, the Wells Fargos and those. They traditionally do a better job. What we're finding issues industry-wise is some of the online banks, that how good of a job they're doing. And that's been, I went to a National Flood Association conference a couple weeks ago, and that was one of the conversations is who's doing a good job, who's not doing a good job, and that's kind of the rule of, or the general thought of that conversation. So
I guess my point is, it's a jeopardy for individuals. We talked about jeopardy for the whole city, but the jeopardy for an individual is if you can't get flood insurance and you flood, right? You have
no relief.
If you have no insurance, if you go to FEMA and say, my house flooded, they're going to say, sorry.
Yeah, you won't even qualify for the individual assistance.
Right, because I've been inspected, by the way. And so the point is that you put yourself in jeopardy, not us. The point is we have to understand is when do we as a city become in jeopardy, as we've been talking, and what does it really mean to us to be threatened with losing flood insurance to everybody versus an individual or two that don't want to pay flood insurance? Because honestly, if you don't carry flood insurance from the person you're buying your home from at the act of sale, you have to go through the whole process. We got trapped with that, and the bill was going to be $4,000 versus $400. okay? But the answer to that is you jack your house up 8.5 feet and then you go back to 400.
Yep.
But you don't even need it. But, you know,
So
I understand.
Angela had a question, and you kind of got flipped over.
Yeah, no, I was just wanting to clarify so I understand. There is an ordinance that states that it needs to be at 116.2, which is the 24 additional, and was
So,
It's 2 foot above.
2 foot, right, I'm sorry, I know what you're saying, but 2 feet above, so was that ordinance just overlooked during this process? Yes.
so it was from the floodplain development permit, we commented on a letter that we sent to the city. That didn't, however, get sent to the applicant.
Right, but the builder needs, I'm assuming the builder would need to look into ordinances.
So we,
here, correct?
so we see, some applications we see an attempt by the builder, the designer, architect, whoever's doing it, to put that on there. Some are better than others. It's not necessarily right or wrong, I don't think, but just some go that extra step because they're familiar with working in the floodplain. Some of those are familiar working with Simonton and y'all's ordinance of no fill, so they already assume that the pier and beam kind of on piers. And then in some, so I mean, some of the applications we get, they look at it preemptively. Sometimes we have to remind them in the application. In this case, they didn't do it up front, so we were working to try to, at the time, working to try to get them to correct it.
If I understand you right, you're saying communication from the city to them.
Never
else
happened.
somewhere?
We did not, so we sent the letter to, so go through our kind of process, because this came up in my meeting with the mayor and Cheyenne. So somewhere about the 2023 timeframe, we changed, working with, Janie was here at the time, we kind of went through and changed our process, where we sent our comments to the city then sent them to the applicant. Prior to that, the process, right, it doesn't really matter which way. Prior to that, we had kind of worked it out with Eric and Jennifer, and even actually goes back to Shelley, where we would send comments directly. I don't remember exactly why that changed with Janie. I think it's just some consistency. We do that similar with some of our other communities that we represent. That way the city could be the clearinghouse, they could be the front, that kind of person. So that's something else that, talk about is if we still want to continue that approach. That way we make sure. But in this case, send it to the city. For some reason, it didn't get passed on.
So the letter that you have of supporting documents that's dated May 20th, that's written to Kristen Bell with Maverick 3D, that's the letter he's written.
Yeah. And so we wrote that address to them, but we sent it to the city as our kind of the process in 2023 we kind of worked out. Either way, we can do it either way. I don't remember the history of why we changed, but it was consistent with some of the other cities that we work with, and that's just how we.
Okay.
So, did I answer your question, Jim?
Did you have a question?
You answered, you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you got it.
Sorry, not me to jump ahead.
You're okay.
All right. Any further questions for Craig?
What would it take to actually lift this home up the additional 2 feet?
Similar to other structures in Simonton, it's a lot of jacking up the house. I don't have a price specific on this one, but Simonton, the first 2 feet, I think from what I remember, and doing some background check, first 2 feet could be anywhere from 30 to 40, and then depending on how high you go up there, it kind of starts to tail on. The first 2 feet, again, this was one of the contractors that came in after Harvey, always told people that came in, the first 2 feet is the hardest.
If it's on the ground.
If it's on the ground,
If it's on the ground. So
Yeah.
there are people who can lift houses that are off the ground.
Yeah. So this one, I don't have great numbers on it because all my numbers from post Harvey are slab on grades that were elevated at that point. So.
Am I allowed to ask? Sure. This is Craig with the engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so I spoke with you on the phone.
Yeah.
I requested several times. You said that you actually submitted that to the city, but have you found to this day the actual email chain of who you submitted it to?
The letter we originally wrote?
Yeah, because you said you wrote it on May 20th, which I don't even know if we had an application on May 20th, so I don't even know if that date was correct or if that's the actual letter.
We had plans, but we didn't have the actual floodplain development permit at that point.
Have you found the email chain of who you sent it to at the city?
Yes.
So who was it sent to?
It was sent to the city secretary email box.
And was Julie Watts working at the time?
Actually, that one was sent to the finance at Simonton, so Julie's email.
So Julie's email, so Julie dropped the ball.
I don't know, because there were a few people working at that point, so I don't know.
Okay. Any other questions for Craig at this point?
The floodplain building permit application was filled out on June 25th of 25, but yet all this other stuff was found sooner.
Yeah, we received plans and everything in our office May, and then one of our comments back to Julie at the time was there's no floodplain development permit application, and so she apparently went through and got one of those, but that permit application never made it to our office.
So if y'all sent the letter in May, and in June, the permit or the request for permit.
The floodplain permit.
Yeah, the request for floodplain permit wasn't done until June. How did they find out?
I don't know.
You needed one.
That I don't know. I think, well, from the email, I mean, I thought, well, I won't speculate in public, but I can go back and double check that.
Is if he sent a letter to the city in May is the 2025, 20th, and then the permit, how, where, whatever, but all of a sudden then in June of 2025, a request for permit for the filing to get the flood permit.
There's communication between Julie and 3D. Maverick 3D.
No, it'd be through Marissa. Marissa's here, if she can speak upon that if you need her to.
To request it.
So somehow this letter came over May 20th, and then somehow only a month and a half later or so-called, they requested for a floodplain application, which we submitted immediately afterwards. And then from there, nothing gets reviewed or whatever. We don't know where the ball got dropped, but ultimately we got approval to get plans, and we got permits paid for them.
For construction, not for, they're separate. So
correct. She sent me literally just numbers and said, click on the number and then pay for it. So I don't even know what I paid for. She says, hey, you're good to go, your permit's approved, here, pay for these, and she sent just links, like literally like 10 number link pads. And so I would just click on them and then pay for them.
Shane, do they typically pay are those typically separate, or when we send those, is it lumped together for one fee?
Floodplain building permits are separated.
Any questions specific to Craig? All right. Thank you, Craig. I sure appreciate that.
Your Honor, if I may
Do you have-
report for a brief rebuttal.
Sure.
I mean, it's not going to rebut too much, but I just wanted to highlight a few things. I think it was clear from Craig's testimony that there was certain concessions where they have already displayed that there was already consideration with regard to the flood zones and consideration of that despite there not being an application, which goes further to the point of what is a builder's reliance with regard to the city and the body in which is permitting and requiring permits to go out on these projects. We already have someone on record indicating that with the engineering, despite there not being a flood, we're already considering those things, and it seems like the floodplain ordinance or the floodplain application is kind of just a red tape for that. It was already something that was considered and already something that was communicated to the city with regard to the requirements of this particular building. And despite all of that, a building permit still was issued late in August of that year. The other thing I just wanted to point out too is the discussion with regard to the FEMA requirements. I know that there were new regulations that were issued in 2025, which makes certain things laxed to make sure there's more resilience compliance throughout local communities, as well as there is the requirement from my review of it was that it has to adopt at least the minimum. So if a city requirement has hits the FEMA minimum, then they're going to be in substantial compliance with regard to any of the benefits that come out with FEMA. And that is through the new changes that were made in what is this? The March 25th, 2025 federal flood risk management standards that were issued by FEMA. And then lastly, with regard to this idea of what's going to happen to the greater community with regard to this particular variance, I think that there are indications here that this body can make a resolution or resolve this issue through a variance now without the need of any additional legwork by anybody else. I think that we're talking about a discrepancy of a few feet, and then we also heard testimony with regard to the the Fort Bend County reassessment of floodplains after, I think, Harvey is what was mentioned too. And so with regard to the flexibility and the changes and those types of things, I think that's what the new FEMA standards are here, or do discuss, is making sure that their standards meet a resilience factor that allow for there to be certain coverages. I did want to yield some of my time to the family because I know that there were issues associated with mortgage and insurance coverage, and I know that they wanted to speak on that, so I would like to have them have the opportunity to do that if the members would be willing, council members.
So I just wanted to let it be known in regards to the insurance or FEMA or mortgage or anything, the house is fully paid off. My mom did invest all her retirement money into that home to get it paid, and she won't have to worry about mortgages for the remainder of her retirement. So there is no mortgage on the house, there's no liens on it, there's no loans on it. She is fine without a FEMA insurance if that's what it comes down to. She can supply her own flood insurance, and she also has the means if anything happens to repair it. So yeah, we just wanted to let them know there's no mortgage involved.
Great,
And then there was one question, it was Councilmember King, who had discussed certain standards as it relates to the general contractors. The permitting and all of that for different cities and different areas and locations, just because municipalities changed and county restrictions, lines apply differently, is usually delegated to the body that's overseeing that. And so when we talk about questions related to what the obligation on the GC is on performing on a particular project like this, there is a reliance on the overseeing body that's in charge of looking at the inspections, certain phases, meeting certain requirements that most GCs in Texas, since there is not a requirement like other states for them to be certified through the state, they are essentially delegated to rely on the authority of the body that's overseeing that the codes are being appropriately managed. And that's all I had as far as my rebuttal. If there were any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. But again, we hope that, a relief that we're requesting, we believe that we're entitled to a certificate of occupancy. I don't want to say that I'm changing positions from what I said way earlier today, but a variance resolves this issue quickly for both the builder and the homeowner. I think that that's the best way to approach this circumstance instead of, having to draw it out and in trying to get them into that home.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
First of all, beautiful home. Thank you guys for being in the neighborhood. But you keep saying you got a building permit. Okay, I've probably got $100 million worth of building under my belt. Okay. In different counties, different cities. And I don't build anything until I have all my permits. Okay. There's building permits, there's fire marshal permits, we have floodplain permits, and we don't touch nothing until we have all. Right? So Marissa filled out a floodplain. And I feel your pain, but you said you paid for whatever you didn't know. Why didn't you guys make sure you had a floodplain permit?
That's not an obligation of the builder once substantial reliance has been.
To build.
Correct.
Floodplain permit application to build in the city.
Correct.
You guys did not make sure you had that floodplain permit.
We received, so if we're interpreting the statutes, there is as far as what the case law is saying, and there's actually a Supreme Court case that deals with this exact same issue with regard to the height requirements in FEMA, and I can brief this council on that exact situation. But with regard to the participation of the inspections, there is essentially estoppel arguments for my client in this. And so to ask the question, the hypothetical of, and this is me doing my best to answer your question, to answer that would be to say, we should have waited to get every single thing in line and in order, but we got a building permit that said the plans and specifications were approved and you can move on. We also had inspectors come, so there was nothing that indicated there was a correct and proceed. And a permit was issued from August that expired in February, and nothing was communicated with the GC until after that permit had expired. So the intent, if we're going to think about it that way, a building permit was issued that was never intended to actually be utilized for the construction of the property on that premises, if the first time they were going to hear that something needed to change was going to happen after that expiration of that permit. And so it's really kind of, I think we kind of touched on it here and there. I think that there is, lapses in communication maybe, or processes, that kind of thing. But I don't think that, the homeowners and the GC in this particular circumstance should be not afforded the opportunity to either move into the home or be given the extreme task of having to change something when nothing was communicated to them before the completion of this particular project. And so that's why I believe a variance would be appropriate for this particular case.
I didn't mean to cut you off if you had something
Oh, no.
Okay. Council, any other questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Council, I will recommend we move to item 6, adjourn to executive session for consultation with legal counsel. It is 7:54. The City Council of the City of Simonton, Texas will convene in closed executive session on the 7th day of April, 2026, beginning at 7:54. You all are welcome to stay in here. The council will move to another room, so you don't have to be dislodged. All right, the City Council of the City of Simonton, Texas ended its closed executive session at 8:32 p.m. And we'll reconvene. And at this point in our agenda, we take action. We'll reconvene in open session, and then our next step will be to take any action resulting from that.
To go back to the agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay, council, just as a reminder, so under your code 8-190, specific standards, residential construction, new construction and substantial improvement of any residential structure shall have the lowest floor, including basement, elevated to a minimum of 24 inches above the floodplain elevation. So tonight, as mentioned by both parties, you have a variance in front of you. I will remind you of the variance procedures. I will remind you of the variance prerequisites. This is section 8-160J. Prerequisites for granting a variance. A determination that the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief. B, showing a good and sufficient cause, that is the applicant. C, a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship to the applicant. And D, a determination that the granting of a variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, or extraordinary public expense, create nuisances, cause fraud on or victimization of the public, or conflict with existing local laws and ordinances.
Bill, would you give us a little bit further information about the hardship?
Yes, so hardships as defined in Chapter 211 of the Local Government Code speaks to a number of factors, many of those factors being potentially presented tonight. As I will say that financial considerations is not the only factor to be considered in a hardship. It is a factor, but not the only factor. Other factors primarily rely on the use of the property. So if a variance is not granted, could that property be a residential structure? Right? If no, then that would be something like a hardship. So that's usually that term, what it looks towards, but that's one of many factors for hardship to consider.
Council, we're open for deliberation or questions. If you have questions further from Phil or Craig.
Could you repeat the first one? Phil, could you repeat the very first one?
Yes. A determination that the variance is the minimum necessary considering the flood hazard to afford relief.
And the second.
Yes. B, showing a good and sufficient cause.
Could you explain what that might be?
So I would argue, having no other information in front of me based on the code, that that is the applicant showing a good and sufficient cause that there should be a variance granted based on the evidence presented.
Council, any questions or discussion?
I have a question, and it might be more for Craig. So when FEMA reviews everything for NFIP insurance, they do an audit on it, and they look at, are they looking at the more stringent of the requirements, what we put into place, or are they looking at what they said is base flood elevation, and which one do they make the determination based on?
So typically, they're looking at what you've adopted as your ordinance and are you following it. Now, if in this case, if you granted the variance, there's a potential that FEMA would say, okay, you at least meet the minimum, and they give you credit for that, but generally speaking, FEMA's looking at what your ordinance says, and did you follow it?
Are you doing what you said you were going to do?
I'm not rushing, just don't want to.
This is probably the hardest decision that I've taken up on council. I pretty much know which way I'm going to go. Any other decisions? This one, because there is a great family, you know, they've made the Simonton better, and they've gotten caught in something, but at the same time, there was no floodplain permit. There's no floodplain, there's a building permit, there's no floodplain. So I can't, personal feelings is, God, I want to say yes, but I can't put the rest of the neighborhood in jeopardy. I would love to say yes. This is, because it's a beautiful home. I don't know, it's common. Not, I mean, I guess we have to let the courts play out. If the council decides, if we did do it, I think we would put restrictions on it if we did variances, but man, I've done a lot of building and we don't do anything until we got all of our T's crossed. You know, and this is unfortunate because the homeowner is the one that gets hurt. So, that's a comment, I guess, not a question.
That's fine.
Maybe it's a comment.
Sure, go ahead, Eric.
Maybe it's a question. Phil, if I took those 4 things you listed, and in my mind, I checked them all off as being to the positive, right, applicable, then I could actually say we could give the variance, because those are the requirements to be able to do a variance. Is that correct?
Yes, those are the considerations.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
Do we feel like we meet all of those considerations?
You asking me?
I'm not asking anybody.
Okay, I think we do, if you ask my opinion.
There's one I'm having a hard time with, and that's putting an expense on the public.
Harm to the public, the last one?
No, for I believe it was in D, and it was,
Both additional threats to public or extraordinary public expense.
because to me that, if everybody's insurance goes up, because we lose that permit, and I understand there's a possibility, and I hate being here as Andy does, I have been through this before personally, and I had to lift it. So I feel the pain, I understand that, but I also know that making everybody pay more insurance, that's a tough one, and to me that disqualifies it.
If I may, if I can speak or address the members, am I?
I think council is at deliberation now.
Okay.
So
To your point, Justin, I think what we heard was that it's a risk factor. You're mentioning a risk factor, right? So if you look at item D and you say there's a risk factor, we have to, in our own mind, in our own decision, decide is that a 50%, 80%, 90% risk factor. I think some of the information we're given is that we would probably, possibly, who knows, be okay, so I'd have to go above 50% as it being less of a risk factor, above 50%, rather than say it's a 90% risk factor that we're going to get hit and it'll be adverse to us. That's just my opinion.
Right, but you're saying that any percentage of a possibility is okay to put on to all of the people in Valley Lodge or the city of Simonton that have a potential of losing their flood insurance.
Actually, I'm not saying that. What I'm
Okay.
saying is, when you look at it as a risk factor in our own minds, and we each individually have to decide if that's a 50% risk that is gonna happen, or is it a 90% risk that they're gonna do that to us, to the whole city, and then decide basically on your own vote based on that. That's all I'm saying.
And okay, well, looking at it from numbers that you're putting, what is the determinant? What determines what level of risk it is?
So I'm listening to the information we got tonight, all from Craig and from them, and in my own mind, I'm weighing that information. So my comment is just strictly based on all the discussions we've had tonight, and my value I place on those discussions and the integrity of the people that talk.
Are we a high-risk area, or are we considered just a standard flood area? Because we've had multiple events over time.
From a flood risk standpoint?
Flood risk
You're
standard.
considered, Valley Lodge is considered a high flood risk.
Okay, so with it being a higher flood risk, would the risk of the community losing the NFIP insurance be greater in Valley Lodge, or would it be the standard numbers?
I think based on what's been presented, I think it's a lower risk of that happening.
Than the other standard areas. So it's lower for Valley Lodge today.
Well, I think in this particular case, I think the way everything has been documented and could be documented moving forward, I think it's a low risk that FEMA would drop the hammer on.
Craig, do we, and maybe for the mayor too, unless you're not done, Justin.
No, go ahead, Tom. Thank you.
So there's two other houses, actually there was three built around me, two. One just finished, one's being built now. Do they have the floodplain permits?
One of the ones, are you talking about Larry and Wagon, or Larry and Pony? Is that one of them?
Well, I don't know.
No,
It would be Longhorn, probably,
Okay.
and then the other one would be Home.
Yeah, so.
Yes, because he faces Home.
Yeah, the one that faces Pony, I know for sure, because I've dealt with that one enough. The other one, I'm pretty sure too, but I'd have to go back and double check. But yeah, we had two permits in that area, recently, as I say recently, in the last, 12 months, 18 months.
Yeah. He said it took a while.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the, Larry, it was a little, the one at Pony that faces Pony, again, was one of those things, which they ended up elevating well above. But it was one of those same things of trying to work with them on how high they decided.
And the other's been given a certificate of occupancy, I'm pretty sure.
The greenhouse.
The greenhouse.
Larry, Bowman?
Angela, did you have anything? I'm not pushing you, I just want to make sure you get interrupted.
No, not right this second.
Okay.
I'd like to get clarification just on the risk, because to me, it's backwards in my head. So if we're a high-risk area, so for them to look at us and say, and I'm not talking about just because of this case or whatever, I'm saying if they looked at our area, we're more susceptible to being looked at by FEMA and then make a decision than another area that never was, or that very rarely was.
I mean, FEMA, because of your flood risk, I don't think FEMA audits you more frequently than other communities. I just think that they probably spend more time, just because of the number of floodplain development permits you have as compared to another community. The last audit that I went through in 2024 with the community, it was a very quick, because they have essentially no floodplain outside of their detention, outside of their channel network. And so there were no permits, there was no floodplain development, so it was a quick turnaround.
Did some of that have to, the speed of that and them able to go through it, did that?
They just didn't have any floodplain, they didn't have any floodplain development because they have no floodplain that's being developed.
Okay.
So.
And everything within this floodplain in this area is?
Biologically completely. But does FEMA look at you differently? Maybe, but I think they still do. They still have their checklist, and they don't. FEMA typically tries not to branch off from that checklist because that's when they get in trouble.
They follow it to the letter of what it states.
Yeah. So, but the city, I mean, the city's passing in flying colors with the way that the city's document stuff is passed, so it's good. So yeah, I think documentation-wise, and how we could document it, and we could, I mean, if you wanted to, FEMA's a little bit harder to get a hold of right now because of the DHS funding, but I mean, we could have this conversation. I could have an offline, or not offline conversation, I could have a follow-up conversation with the state flood coordinator, just kind of run it through them, and just kind of see what, I mean, that is, if you wanted to go that route and then get some more feedback. I'm sure this is not a new scenario, so they may be able to provide some feedback on it. But after Harvey, they weren't as helpful because they kicked everything to FEMA, but this one, maybe they're willing to help a little bit, considering the DHS funding, and nobody can get research right now.
We don't know when they're going back to work.
DHS there, but the Texas Water Development Board is the state floodplain coordinator for the state of Texas. They're fairly responsive. Unless they need FEMA to actually determine something, they give us the same spiel. We're in line for when they are back to work. Because we have some active things with FEMA that we're trying to iron out in other communities. It's just been a whole pattern. So. But I say there is precedent in the National Flood Insurance Program to grant variances following the conditions of the variance in your so, as long as you follow the process, that's what FEMA seems to do, generally, in my experience, with a couple of audits we've gone through. So.
Okay. Thank you, Craig. Council, any further discussion or questions?
I'll say a few things. I'm kind of with Andy. I mean, this is a very tough decision. But on top of that, we have ordinances for a reason, and that's to protect the city. Every one of us on this panel were affected by the floods. I personally lost my home. And I put a lot of pressure on my builder to make sure that all the ordinances were met, and so there weren't any issues like this. I don't know what else to say other than I'm sorry y'all are having to go through this. I really am. But at the same time, I do think that we need to protect the city and its citizens. I'm not willing to take any chance or do a quick risk assessment of what it would cost all of our citizens if we lost FEMA insurance. I know that had I not had it on the home that I lost, I would be homeless today. So I think that's something that we all really need to consider.
All right, council, are you ready for a vote? Or
Do we need-
last call for questions?
Do we need a motion? Do we need a motion to vote on?
We will. Okay. Do we have a motion? Or consider a possible action on the requested variance from Maverick 3D at 221 Stockade.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the requested variance from Maverick 3D at 221 Stockade Drive.
All right, we have a motion to accept or grant the variance for 221 Stockade. Do we have a second? All right, this motion dies for lack of a second. Council, do we have a further motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the request.
All right. Council, we have a motion to deny the variance request for 221 Stockade. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right. Cheyenne, would you please take a roll call vote? We have a motion and a second to deny the variance.
Councilmember Eric Duhan,
No.
Councilmember Angela King,
I decline the simple fact that I just can't put the citizens of Simonton at risk of losing an FIV.
And so by decline,
And
is that?
decline.
you're fourth.
For the motion or against the motion?
Sorry if I misworded that.
That's fine.
For the motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Justin Boudreau,
Favor of.
Councilmember Andrew Perry,
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly Crossan.
Aye.
All right, thank you, council, for that consideration and deliberation. The motion passes, so the variance is denied for 221 Stockade. Thank you all for presenting and sharing with us. You are welcome to stay. We're going to cover some other business, but you're also welcome. That's enough for you today. Sure. We're going to take a couple-minute break. It is 8:53.
We're taking a brief recess. There'll be no deliberation or discussion on any of the agenda items.
That's right.
A bio break,
Right.
as we call it.
this just the consent agenda left?
No, we have a couple more items.
B and C.
Ordinance, and you'll see that over there. All right, we're going to reconvene. It is 8:54. Request to remove the items from consent, so we'll take them individually. We have minutes of the March 11, 2026 special meeting. Eric, do you have some corrections
Yes, ma'am.
or questions?
Yes, I do. First of all, I think that the minutes should always have a record of the quorum being present and a council attendance. So I'd like that corrected. And then there's a motion on new business that made by Angela King that states that she may come back to council for approval. I'd like that just added to unfinished business. So in case Angela does get information, she can share it.
And what number is it?
It's, if you look at for new business, motion made by Angela on the minutes, it specifically says she could come back, potentially come back for council for approval.
So in the minutes, you really want to capture what was said and what the action is. If it needs to be on a future agenda as unfinished, it would be on the future agenda. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. In a way, so this was just her fact that she made a motion, right? In the motion, she stated that with the potential to come back to the council for approval and any changes. If you remember the whole discussion,
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is let's just go throw that on, give her the opportunity to come back by putting it on unfinished business.
But it wouldn't
But
be.
it wouldn't belong on this minutes.
No, it would
It
not.
would be on somewhere future.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
so we're considering the minutes, right?
Okay, so then I make a motion to accept with corrections and with a report by the city secretary that corrections are made and then posted to the website. So we have an opportunity, city secretary.
Okay, stop for a second. So you're requesting, your motion is to approve
Yes,
with the addition of the attendance,
yes.
and you want the city secretary to make a report?
Well-
What kind of report?
Okay, so every time we have a meeting, we actually have an opportunity for council reports, everyone's reports, and the city secretary also has the opportunity to make a report. So all I'm asking for is to close the loop, I'm suggesting and asking that the city secretary, once all its corrections are made, and we get it posted to the website, that she could actually just report that it's done.
Okay, that's not part of the minutes though, so I don't object if you'd like her to tell you at a later date that it's been posted. But my confusion is that's not part of the minutes, right?
So, how would it
Part of this?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's part of the motion, that his motion is to accept it with the amendments, and that she report that it's been uploaded to the website at the next meeting. And so, putting that caveat, not in the minutes, but just as part of the motion requirement.
All right, do we have a second to the motion?
I'll make a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda item 4B is March 17th, regular meeting minutes. Eric, since you pulled this one, do you have a correction?
Yes, ma'am. So on 4B, again, we need a record of a quorum and council attendance, and in fact, on that particular meeting, the mayor was actually absent, so it'd be good to have that on the record. And also, I would imagine it might have been just confusion or whatever, but on all of the item like 4 consent agenda and 5, all of these say ayes, 4, but there was 5 people here who voted.
Oh, yep, that was a mistake.
So, just I'd like that corrected. And then the quarterly financial report was removed from the agenda by Mayor Pro Tem, and I guess we didn't suggest then to move that to unfinished business, and so we either have to throw it into the motion, or we can just understand that we need to get that report there.
Correct.
How you would like to handle it.
It doesn't have to be in the motion, but it's your choice.
So,
Before you make a motion, can I add?
I don't know.
There are
What's
a
the
couple
process?
of, Cheyenne, there are a couple of typos as well. I
Okay.
meant to send them to you today.
No, you're fine.
I didn't get to it.
Tell me what they are.
If you can add that into your motion, Eric.
Yes, ma'am, to correct all typos. But do you want to point them out, Kelly, specifically? Is it required?
Well, the ones I saw were under section 9, item F, EDCA, the A is lowercase.
Oh.
And then, and EDCB met, A talked about, it should be and.
Yep.
And again, minor, but
I
that's
was
what I
rushing
found.
to get these to you guys.
Okay.
So this is my bad.
Is that it, Kelly?
Yes.
All right. So I'd like to make a motion to accept with corrections and with a report by City Secretary that corrections are made and posted to the website, the minutes of March 17th, 2026.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Justin, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you. Council, thank you for paying attention to detail and helping us get those correct. I would add, I know that we've discussed this previously, but if you let Cheyenne know about these corrections prior to the meeting, she can have the corrected version available so that you can spend your time on really important things, and she's heard you and made corrections in advance. Item 5B, we've already done 5A, so we're moving on now to item 5B. Consider and possible action to approve City of Simonton Ordinance Number 2026-04. It's an ordinance authorizing the retention of pending Keys Collaborative to provide professional planning services for the administration of the interim development review ordinance, establishing escrow requirements for development application review, and providing for cost recovery, providing for conflict of interest, and providing an effective date. So this is the follow-up ordinance after you approved the interim. Make sure I use the right word. Yeah, the interim development review ordinance, and basically setting the fee, and that will escrow that money. If the cost of the review done professionally by Kendrick East to make sure that we're in compliance or that the permit is in compliance, if that money is not all expended or needed, it gets returned to the permit holder. If there's more money due at the end, they would pay a balance. You know, if they spent more than $100 or some amount, we would ask them to pay that. The details are in your in the ordinance context itself.
Yeah,
But-
Bill, sorry.
Go ahead.
Bill, sir. So, we had a good meeting today on this, our committee had this, and I would want to amend this to where it exempts the Valley Lodge residents. Okay.
So I have a recommendation for you.
Okay, go ahead.
After that meeting, we got a revision from Kendrick Keys, and you would actually,
Yes, so
the
that,
proposal would be to, I mean, to interrupt you, the proposal would be to amend the agreement
During the meeting.
From last time.
Okay.
Ordinance number 2026-03, I believe.
Yes.
So you would do an exemption, in that ordinance. So you wouldn't say Valley Lodge specifically, but the proposal would be that you would exempt single-family residential if it meets requirements. It's already on an approved lot.
But that item will fully come to council
That'll
at a
come to
later
council at the
date.
next meeting.
What's before you tonight is just the approval that they can do the building review and the permit review portion. Remember last time we passed the ordinance and said that, hey, some of this is going to require some review and based on the Unified Development Code and the steps we've already taken to pass certain building or zoning restriction, like, it's kind of that interim one. And so what they're going to do is they're going to help with that sort of review and process of that SUP to help walk council through, hey, here are the steps, here's the language you have to approve to approve it, that sort of thing. That's all this is, and it brings them in on that sort of contingency basis that was anticipated in one of their appendices.
Okay. So we can change it next, the other one.
Yeah, the base ordinance itself will be back to council for review at some point with an amendment. I won't promise in 2 weeks, but I think it will be.
It will be on the next meeting.
I don't promise anything.
I promise, it'll be on the next
Okay,
meeting.
there you go.
It's ready, we just didn't have it.
It might need some further tweaking,
Yeah.
but we're close.
Okay, I almost promised.
Can I make a comment on that? I want to thank Councilman Perry for bringing that up, and it was one of those things that we actually talked about a lot, excluding Valley Lodge, and I want to thank you, Mayor, for saying that it also should extend to all residents, all home residents, all buildings that are currently on the ground. So I appreciate that. Look forward to that.
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right.
I have to read all.
No.
I make a motion for ordinance number 2026-04, authorizing the retention of Keating Keys Collaborative to provide professional planning services for the administration of the interim development review ordinances, yada, yada, yada.
Wait.
And I'm out.
No, because it's in the agenda, it's legally posted agenda, so it's approval of item 5B, or sorry, 4, is it 5? 5B is presented, yes.
I second.
All right, thank you, Eric.
Well,
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. All right, last item for today, item 5C. You have a copy of a modified cash basis financial statement for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2025. This is prepared by our auditor. It's an additional report, a financial statement for the fiscal year to help us meet the reporting requirements for Senate Bill. Bill, I like my page. What's the
It was a
Senate
Senate Bill.
1851.
1851.
1851, I got it.
Only a few thousand of them.
Right.
One of
Yes,
those.
but 1851, yes.
Council has also received, although I've been giving them to you as we've received them, but updates from Texas Municipal League dated as early as June 20th, 2025, outlining the requirements. And then we had a reminder of the filing deadline and the recommendations from Texas Municipal League about how to comply with Senate Bill 1851. Knowing that every municipality in the state is required to meet this reporting deadline, getting those complete audits done in that timeline is not possible in lots of cases, but it's ongoing. So for the city of Simonton, we engaged with them to give this financial statement. It was received within 180 days. It was posted on our website. Our full audit is continuing. I, like Phil, don't want to promise a date, but it should be done here in the next 6 weeks-ish, 4 to 6 weeks. So you will absolutely get the full report just like you typically would. This is an additional step for reporting requirements. Phil, do you want to give a better recap? This was not done in a vacuum.
Yeah, no, Mayor, this is that idea that, there's an annual financial statement required by each city, Chapter 103 of the local government code. Many cities are dealing with, small cities dealing with the same requirement as something like a Houston. or in Austin, right? So saying the requirement applies to every city. And so this procedure for sort of the, almost call it the forensic accounting methodology, is not what has been demanded of by the AG. But many cities have gone to that because they want as much financial transparency as possible. The issue is that it takes far longer than 6 months sometimes, just even to get a firm in place. So the concept here and what the auditing firm presented and what TML advised on as well, just in general, is being able to provide this annual financial statement, right, with sort of an initial look at the financials, and then for the public to see, and then continue to churn through to get that deep audit done as well. So this doesn't replace anything, it's just a way to be more financially transparent earlier in this process, and then a final audit report, full audit with, they come and present and all that, as council has done in the past, can be presented and then added to. This won't go away, but it'll be added to it. So it's almost like having two sort of it's like a rolling audit in a way. Again, I'm not an auditor, so I'm probably using the wrong term, but it's like having a rolling statement and then continuing that process. And then once that financial audit is done, then obviously it'll start again and for the end of the fiscal year and get that rolling financial statement of the previous year, and then continue as the auditor does their sort of forensic deep dive.
Sounds great. Thank you, sir. Any questions from council?
Yes. But I defer to anybody else first, because I have, as usual, several comments.
Go ahead.
Thank you. When I looked at this and the independent auditor report, and the mayor and I talked, and she said that Coach Watson wouldn't be here, but you feel that she can answer all the questions. So
I think I said, would you please submit your questions so we can get homework? I hope that we have answers for you since we didn't receive it.
So the problem I have with that is it's an administrative request, not an actual legal requirement.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm just trying to get it out in the open so everybody knows. Because people should.
Ask us. Go
Thank you. So the contract does not clearly state that the audit will be performed on a modified cash basis when I'm looking at the contract. Yet the report says we were engaged to audit the modified cash basis, etc., right? So I look at a report and I look at a contract, and to me they don't match. But like you started to explain to me, maybe you can continue. How did we go from buying a full audit to buying a different piece of information?
Because we knew we were not going, the auditor knew they were not going to make our deadline because they were not finished. So
Okay.
I spoke with the auditor, John, and they shared their opinion and the TML support, and we checked the fill. So this is an additional engagement, not the same engagement as when we did the full audit.
Okay, so it's going to cost us differently?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a dollar.
Yep.
$7,500?
$2,500.
Thank you. All right, so with that said, so the council didn't know that we're going to spend another $2,500 and that there were additional costs, but I appreciate you giving us that now, Mayor. And you explain as to who asked for it and why. When I look at the actual statement of asset liabilities, page 4 for everyone. Hopefully we're there. The statement of assets, liabilities, net assets, modified cash basis states that we have $2,615,858. The latest and greatest report we had on the quarterly report ending 9/30 stated, and you will not be able to see the figure unless you go to this page. We did have the blank one. Remember this one? And then I came back to the council and said, I've added it up for us. This was also in our package way back, so I'm just going to reference it. But in that addition that I did, it comes up that our city funds available at 9/30 was $2,521,551.88. So the difference is actually a positive to what they're saying of $94,307. Now, I'm not going to try to explain it, I'm not even going to ask for it to be explained, I'm just going to say, they're the auditors, they came up with the figure. If we continue on to this report and get to page 11. Okay? On page 11, under detailed notes on all funds, deposits, and investments, they published here, the external investment pool, text pool, has $28,165, and there's a dollar sign in front of that. Does anybody believe that that's actually a dollar sign for text pool balance? No. But I decided, well, it's got to be something to this. It has to be something an auditor did or the way they computed it. I'm going to submit to you my way to try to make this make sense. And so what I did was I said, okay, that's probably numbers of shares. That's not the amount of the money, because it cannot be the amount of money. So if we went to text pool on 9/30 and said, well, how much money did we have? We had not $395,396.04. If you take that figure and you look at the interest that's on that same report that we earned of $11,362.11, then you can make sense. You can take the 28,000 into the 395,000 and come up with the 11,000 interest, and we actually got 2.8% on this investment. They did state 0.12, but that's just a factor of 1 month. So what we really got was 2.8%. Now, I'm not saying I'm the auditor, I'm just saying this is something I computed in order to try to make sense of this, instead of just saying this thing is not right, it's just not right. And in addition, okay, I'm done with those pages. You stated, Mayor and Phil, you said something to the inference that you talked to TML, did you?
No, the TML guidance that was published.
Okay, so you referred to a TML document, right? And you gave us the TML document.
Yes.
So I'm looking at the TML document, and
Are you looking at the
I'm looking at
post-session update, or the city audit filing reminder?
reminder, city audit filing, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm looking at that, and the things I want to point out on that is that we inferred, or the mayor and Phil basically are saying that the auditor, legal, and TML agreed to accept this in alignment with 1851. I'm not sure you actually said that, I'm just saying it seems to be inferred that we're in agreement and we're okay. So when I look at that, I'm going, all right, so Chapter 103, the very first paragraph, basically states, Chapter 103, Texas Local Government Code requires the city to have its records and accounts audited annually and to file the resulting annual financial statement together with auditor's opinion on that statement. Now, we don't have an opinion. We have a disclaimer of opinion, in fact, and that is not an opinion. So that concerns me. We have a disclaimer of opinion instead of an opinion. They also, on this same report you're using, said that they believe that Friday, March 27th would be the more realistic filing deadline. I don't know when did Cheyenne actually receive the report, whether it was 27th, 30th, whenever, but it's dated the 30th. And the page that has the blue, we all have the page that has the blue lines on it, right? Highlighted? I'm going to turn to that page.
That's from June 20th, 2025.
Yes, ma'am. In it, it said the statement may be filed with the city secretary that has a valuation of assets, liabilities, and certain employee benefits programs be included in a financial statement. Of course, in our modified one now, they're not. It also said it's not clear whether the new penalty is going to apply for which years and all. Well, we all know that. We all know that the Attorney General and everybody else has been ambiguous. We all know and decided last year to take a chance and say, well, if they catch us, but we'll go ahead and raise the tax rate. But when I look at this and I see disclaimer of opinion is not an opinion, it means the auditor could not complete the audit and therefore cannot say whether the city's financial statements are accurate. Auditors issue a disclaimer when they cannot get the records or evidence they need. When that happens, they are required to state clearly, we do not express an opinion. This is the most serious outcome that an audit can have because it means the financial statements cannot be relied on. It does not judge whether the information was missing. It simply states the auditor could not complete the work. A disclaimer tells the public that the city financial information needs correction before a full audit can be completed. And so we know that we are trying to get a full audit. We know that that's in the future. And I would say, I would hope that the full audit corrects everything else. Now, I would be remiss if we didn't take this as a learning exercise. Because in the next month or so, we're going to have a new mayor, and we're going to have a new council. And we're going to have a budget season coming in. And all of this is going to point right back to the same issues we just fought with last year. So what I want to...
What issues specifically are you referring to?
The issue of not being in compliant and then just saying we're go ahead and raise the tax rate to the maximum. That's an issue.
I think that your fellow council members disagree with you, but so I think that we're going to be in budget season and those decisions we have to be made. Is that what your point is?
No. If you go back in history, you're absolutely right that we voted to accept a certain tax rate. The discussions back then was, well, that's not no new revenue rate, but we're going to take a chance and just go ahead and give and use that number, right?
I believe that the opinion from Bill and the council was that we're not just bucking the rule and going to take a chance on it. It was, we feel that the intent of the law is this, we feel like we've complied, and the council took that action.
I guess the thing that just stuck in my mind was the comment by Councilman Perry that we're just going to do this and let them come after us, we'll deal with it then. That's what just stuck in my mind. If I'm
I don't
wrong,
think I quite said
if I'm wrong,
that,
Andy,
but okay.
If I'm wrong, Andy, please correct me.
I don't remember exactly how I said it. Don't put words in my mouth.
I'm not putting words in.
You just did.
Okay, but the video can prove it. All right, so then we go to, where is that document? Give me 1 second. Seem to be missing.
We're just receiving this report.
There's no motion.
All right, so I have a few rhetorical questions. These are rhetorical questions, okay?
Okay, before you go to the next questions, could we address something that you already brought up?
Sure.
Just real quick. So your first item that you brought up was about the financial statement and the dollar value at 2.6 million. And what was the question or negative about that? It's more than the last quarterly report? Is that
No.
you were just making the statement, or?
Okay, so what I was trying to do there is saying they gave us a document and the figure in it, if you look at our information, do not match, which is supporting the fact that they're saying they can't validate our information. And that in fact, they're giving us $94,000 more than what we say we did on 9/30 by our report, that's all. So, in summary, I'm looking,
So what are the new questions?
well,
Or rhetorical questions you said?
yes. So rhetorical questions I have for us as a council to understand that we all have a responsibility moving forward, I guess, to do a better job. What was the city not able to provide to the auditors that caused the current outcome of the lack of a full, complete audit?
I can tell you that.
I'm not asking for answers, I'm just...
Well, by you bringing it up and saying that we can do better, so let's be sure that we get it, we do better
Okay.
going forward.
Go ahead.
The testing process that the auditor does, you give them everything that they ask for, everything that they need, then they go through and initiate what's called testing. It's an automation system, and then it kicks out, all right, so now we have an additional question. So we continue to answer I'm going to call them additional questions. We get them every week, sometimes multiple times a week. We're turning those around immediately and giving them back. But because they haven't finished their process, it's not Not that they aren't getting answers or they're not getting cooperation, it's that they're not finished. So that's.
So you're saying
that's what
that the delay is totally on them?
I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. They're doing the
Well, I
great process.
understand.
The
You're
process
saying-
isn't complete.
Right, the process isn't complete because they did not finish the process in time.
I think because we're small and we were not early enough in the calendar for this process to play out to meet our original deadline.
Okay. So the next rhetorical question is, why was the council not kept apprised of the problems to meet this? We wanted to meet a full audit.
Their
by-
idea their information that they said they weren't going to make the deadline, the original deadline.
Yeah,
just
that's
because we
it.
hadn't met.
Rhetorical question, again. You can answer it and.
Okay, well, I am. We hadn't met. The decision had to be made right then in order to, within a week or however many, 10 days, to take action to be sure we met the deadline. So I did.
So.
And that's why I put it on the agenda so that everybody could be aware.
All right, I understand that, but when were you aware that we would not make the deadline? We didn't have to meet every month to tell us. We could tell us anytime.
From the time that I discussed it with them,
Mm-hmm.
there was not a meeting. I don't have it in front of me because
I'm sorry.
I didn't know what your question was going
The
to be.
reason why I asked it rhetorically is that I don't particularly care for an answer, just to care that we understand that there's a process.
But I guess I want to answer because it sounds like continual bash and trash, and I'd like you to have the information instead of just putting it out there and then let it hang.
So.
If I can answer, I will. If I can't, I will get it for you.
Okay, fair enough. So we could have had, and an observation that we can look for the future. While all of this was happening and we were starting to fail, we could have had another employee hired. We had money. We've had money all along to hire somebody if we needed help.
But that person doesn't work for them.
I understand. We were providing
I
that.
understand, but that's not the issue in this particular case. They have their clients scheduled in time periods. And we're brand new this year to them. We were not at the front of the line.
Yeah, Bill, how many, there was 1,200 communities that did what we did during budget season. This has to be a lot more communities doing the same thing because there's not enough auditors to do all that to meet the state requirements that they push through.
Every local government that I'm involved with is straining against this deadline.
Correct. So it ain't no fault of ours or theirs, it's just there's not enough auditors in Texas to make this happen. So there ain't no blame to go around. Talk to Bettencourt. He's the one that started this.
Well,
Hey, if it belongs with us, I am perfectly happy to say the buck stops with me. But I would like everybody to know that we are working weekends, nights, whenever is
Okay.
needed to make sure that we are not holding up the process.
Mayor, I think you're taking this as a personal attack, and it's not intended at all. Up front, I said this is something for the council to learn from, so we have a learning experience. And the comment, to Andy's comment is, we contracted with an auditor. We didn't have a shortage of auditors. We contracted with one.
You're right.
For a substantial fee. And so my comments are not that we didn't have everything set up for success, is how did we not have success, okay? And it's not intended. So if we go back, and this is a learning experience, I hope we take it as that, and if you're angry with me, you're angry with me. But Breedlove delivered a clean audit, 23-24 on August the 19th. Okay, so we had a good start, we had a clean audit, and Breedlove delivered it. In December of 2024, directly from the minutes, and I'm going to quote directly from the minutes, City Finance Julie Watts provided a report that everything is now in fund view at 90% reconciled. Mayor Boudreaux did say that the reconciliation is not quite complete, meaning it's only 90%, but that reports will be provided in January 2025 when a complete reconciliation is anticipated. So, okay. So if this is correct and the finances were in great shape to complete the reconciliation and stay current with all postings, payments, receipts, revenue, then the city should have been able to close out FYE 24-25 with no issues and been able to provide any and all documentation to the auditor necessary to perform in a timely manner, which is what they gave us the schedule. We hired them. They said when they would get everything done. August 19th, 2025, same as 4A. Breedlove had done the audit. Mayor submits an independent contractor agreement for Stacy to help keep us on track. Julie's workload was decreased by the mayor and Stacy took it over. Breedlove delivered the clean audit and we said, okay, we're moving on. November 5th, item 4A in the minutes. Discussion by Councilmember Duhon that the contract seems to be similar to the city's old audit firm and they had several delays. Mayor Boudreaux advised that she has addressed all the issues with Brooks Watson. The fiscal year will be ready to be audited in the beginning of December. February 24th, item 9 in reports. February 24th, 26th. Eric Duhon also requested an update about the audit. Mayor states the staff is currently sending information and is ongoing. March 17th, item 9A reports. Mayor Pro Temp Boudreaux spoke about the audit and said that it was going well and on track. And then we get to March 30th where Brooke Watson gives us this new financial statement. So that they don't express an opinion. So being that they can't express an opinion and there's a basis for a disclaimer of opinion, it looks like, in my mind, that we could have a problem. So in summary, basically, what I'm saying is, since the disclaimer of opinion is not an opinion, since we seem to have, we could clearly have a debate about it being complete or whatever, I would like us to be proactive instead of reactive. And because I would like us to be proactive on this issue in its entirety, I would like to make a motion to have administration request an Attorney General opinion as to the validity of the document to satisfy requirements of Senate Bill 1851.
So Phil, we don't have any action on this item on the agenda. We're going to need your guidance.
Yeah, so I think it's okay as far as what we're discussing because it's administrative action, it's direction to staff. So if we want to take a second and a vote, now the process to getting stuff submitted to the AG is going to be a different process. We can't just submit a letter. There's only certain people restricted to submitting that letter, so we'll have to look into the process for who can submit it. A lot of times people will get like the county to submit it on their behalf or things like that, but cities can't directly submit. But we can look into it if that's the direction to staff.
So the Secretary can submit an Attorney General opinion?
I can for a PIR, but not for...
Yeah, for certain things.
Okay.
There's certain carve-outs.
Just want to clarify.
Yeah. I'm talking about general law opinions.
So, just so that I can understand what your motion is, you would like us to send our financial statement that we believe meets the requirements and say, does this meet your requirement?
Correct, by the Attorney General, and therefore, if we get a positive response, we're done. We're done for next year. The budget, everything, we're just going to move on. We can go beyond NNR. If he comes back with a negative and says, oh no, it does not meet the requirements, then we're done. We can only go NNR. And that's all I'm asking for. Future, protect the council, and just move on.
What is your opinion about the effect of doing that or not doing that?
I mean,
So the other council members can have some.
yeah, I mean, per chapter 103, it is the AG's determination. Typically, that's initiated by the AG, as we saw with some of the other cities. I don't think there's anything legally impermissible about putting in the request beforehand. Again, I don't know the procedure. I wasn't prepared to speak to that tonight, so I'd have to look into what that would actually take, if we can do it, how that process would work with the AG, depending on who can submit, under what statute we're submitting under, those sort of things. I would just have to take those steps. I know 103 puts a little bit of an open door to how to submit, but again, have to look procedurally since it's a relatively new statute.
So the request is for administration, so that would include you, would it not, to work with administration to get this done? Get this passed? You're saying you're going to have to be involved to find...
Well, you're directing staff.
Okay.
Right, so any
If I
staff
decide that I need
involved,
help, then
yeah, any staff involved needs to be.
Because you said you're going to need to be involved. I thought you said that.
I would hope if we're reaching out to the AG
Okay.
that you'd involve your city attorney, yes.
Yeah. So directing staff, does it require a motion?
No, we can go with the consensus.
Right, it's just a consensus, right? So,
What?
But right now, we're following what the rest of the communities are doing for the most part.
I mean, Yeah, there's a few that have gotten the audit, there's a few that have gotten the audit completely done because they've used the same auditing firm for 12 years. There's a few that I think just haven't gotten it done at all, have done nothing, and are just busting the deadline. There's a few that have taken this step as well. I mean, I don't have a survey of how many have done it. We just hit the deadline, so I don't know how much has been posted, but and we can start Googling other cities and see, what's up there. But yeah, it's, as was mentioned, I mean, you saw from the letter, this was a step that they thought would be helpful to get something on the record, right? To get something published to the website as required by 103.
Yeah, from advice from TMO.
So, the last comment in support of possibly getting a second mayor is that if we make a motion, it's a lot more, there's a lot more inference and power than just saying, oh, we're just going to tell you to go do this. Because things are going to change.
To contact the AG.
Go ahead and read it.
To
Motion to have
determine
administration,
our ability to determine,
Attorney General opinion as to the validity of the document to satisfy requirements of SB 1851. You do write fast.
it's back when we all learned to write cursive. All right, do we have a second? All right, the motion dies for lack of a second. But your request is noted, and we can certainly do the homework to find out what there is that we can learn. Is that your last item about the financial
Oh,
statement?
thanks for asking. Yes, it is.
So, item, well, we didn't call it an item, that's the last item on the agenda. We are going to adjourn at 9:36.